All right, so today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful, maybe even a little uncomfortable idea, the wisdom of being really selective with the truths we share.
You totally know that feeling, right? That click, that eureka moment. It could be some new spiritual insight or a big idea that just lands, and suddenly everything makes a little more sense.
And what's the very first thing you want to do? You want to tell everyone. You want to text your whole contact list, you want to blast it out on social media. It feels like you'd be selfish not to share something so amazing.
But here's the twist. This is the big question for today. What if that impulse, that just uncontrollable excitement to share, isn't just a bit much, but is actually, well, spiritually irresponsible?
And that brings us to this really core concept that kind of reframes the whole way we think about knowledge. It's about seeing it as a seed, not as confetti.
So the whole idea here is that deep truth, it's like a precious, sacred seed. And like any seed, you can't just throw it anywhere and expect it to grow, right? It needs the right conditions. You can't just toss seeds on the pavement. You have to check the soil, because real growth needs a calm, prepared foundation.
And this comparison just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got that indiscriminate sharing. It's chaotic, frantic, it creates a spectacle. It's literally throwing seeds on pavement. But on the other side, you have selective sharing. It's calm, it's prepared, and it's all about creating a real connection because you took a second to actually check the soil.
And this quote just, man, it nails it. You can share some mind-blowing fact and make somebody go, whoa! But that astonishment, that admiration, it doesn't mean anything has actually changed inside them. They've been entertained, sure, but they hasn't evolved. You've just created a spectacle, not actual progress.
So you might be wondering, where does this whole idea come from? Well, it's not new. It actually has a pretty significant historical precedent, which the source material calls the master's triage.
And the prime example we're given is Jesus, who practiced this kind of spiritual triage. What that means is he didn't give the same message to everyone. He reserved the deepest, most complex mysteries for those who had the spiritual capacity to actually get it, to handle it.
Let's look at a couple of specific examples. First, the Transfiguration. I mean, this was a massive, profound mystical event, and he only took 3 of his 12 disciples. It wasn't about loving the others less, it was about their capacity to understand what they were seeing. And then, at the Last Supper, he literally waited for Judas to leave the room before he shared his deepest vulnerabilities. Judas was no longer a safe container for that kind of truth.
And this is so crucial to understand. This isn't about being an elitist or gatekeeping the truth, not at all. It's about protecting the message itself. If you toss a complex, fragile idea to an audience that's mocking or just not ready, it gets twisted, it gets weaponized, it gets turned into a meme. This is about making sure the truth can actually survive the landing.
Okay, so that's the ancient wisdom, but how in the world does this apply to us now in the age of the internet? Well, the key is to focus on resonance over reach.
Let's be real. The entire way our digital world is built is for one goal: go viral. Get the most clicks, the most views, the most reach. We are literally trained to broadcast everything as far and wide as we possibly can.
But this wisdom tells us to do the exact opposite. Prioritize resonance. Focus on the few people, the few seekers who are genuinely ready and actually curious. Don't burn yourself out trying to fix or convince everybody, especially not the trolls in the comment section.
And this leads to such a hopeful way of looking at things. When you post something deep and meaningful online and you get crickets, our ego immediately says, I failed, nobody cares. But what if that silence wasn't rejection? What if it was protection? What if the universe or the algorithm just gently filtered your message so it only landed with the few people whose soil was ready for it?
Okay, so this is all great in theory, but how do we actually do it? Well, it comes down to a simple 3-step toolkit. First, check the soil. Is the person ready? Second, check the seed. Is this the right truth for this moment? And third, and this one's the big one, you gotta check yourself.
Now here's a brilliant way to check the soil. Offer bread, not the recipe. What this means is you share the essence of your values, things like kindness, patience, hope, without using all the complex jargon or niche terminology that can just put up a wall. You offer something simple, something nourishing, and see who's actually hungry for more.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the toughest part of the toolkit: checking yourself. Before you hit send, before you open your mouth, you've got to perform what's called the mirror check.
And here's the question you ask.
Am I sharing this to serve their growth, or am I sharing this to validate my own ego? Do I really want to help them, or do I just want to be seen as the wise one who has all the answers? Being brutally honest with yourself right there, well, that changes everything.
So the ultimate takeaway is this: love everyone. Be generous with your heart. Be open and kind to everybody, no exceptions. But when it comes to your deepest truths, to those sacred seeds, be frugal with your words.